Good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth. Our meeting date is Monday, November 20th, 2023. I'm Deputy Mayor Doug Kellum and I call this meeting to order. I ask the clerk to note our starting time for the minutes as 7 p.m. A warm welcome is extended to councillors, staff, delegations, and observers who will participate in this meeting, regardless of whether being physically in the attendance in the council chamber in Listowel or being connected through web technologies. We begin tonight's meeting with the playing of O Canada. Those in the chambers as are able are invited to stand. We acknowledge that we're on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe peoples. We wish to recognize the long history of Indigenous peoples in Canada and show our respect to them today. We recognize their stewardship of the land. May we all live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship. Tonight's meeting is being streamed live on the Municipality of North Perth YouTube channel and will be available thereafter this meeting as an archive video. To those viewing this meeting via YouTube channel, a warm welcome to you. To those present in the gallery today, by attending a public meeting of the Council, you are consenting your image, voice, and comments being recorded. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded, and their voice, image, and comments will be part of the live stream. The Chair and/or the Clerk have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal actions if their actions result in inappropriate or unacceptable behavior and/or comments. Thank you. At this time, I invite your decorum over the course of the coming meeting. I do have regrets this evening from Mayor Kaysenberg. Let us move on to item 5 of our agenda pertaining to pecuniary interest. For the benefit of those unfamiliar with our council practices, provincial legislation requires councillors with a potential pecuniary or financial interest in any item at the council table to declare this interest and to remove her or himself from discussions in voting on the item. In accordance with recommended protocol at this time, I invite all councillors with a perceived pecuniary interest, including those who have declared in writing, to verbally advise the chair in public session and to submit documentation to this effect in writing to the clerk. Councillors are further reminded should a potential conflict arise during the meeting, they may so declare and act at that point of the meeting. Council, do you have any pecuniary interests this evening? Sure, get onto these numbers yet, Dave? Councillor Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I will declare conflict on item 8.1, our public meeting, and then the bylaws dealing with that public meeting, 12.1, and then the confirmatory bylaw, 17.1. I'm an officer of a corporation that owns land beside the application.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Is there anyone else? Seeing none. All participants are invited to speak when called upon by yours truly, serving as the chair. Those participating remotely who wish to speak may draw the attention of the clerk through our conferencing technologies chat function. Remote participants are asked to generally maintain a mute state in the web conference until I recognize your right to the floor. If, when I do so recognize, I don't hear you because you are muted or having some technical difficulty, I will advise. Let us now focus on the people's business. I invite those in the chamber to silence and put away their phones. I invite decorum. Moving on to item number 6 of our agenda, I have a motion before me for the approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting that reads as follows. That the agenda for tonight's meeting be approved. Moved by Councillor Rothwell, second by Councillor Norton. Who are we missing? Councillor Duncan, what say you?
I'm in favor.
No problem. And that is carried. We're now at item 7 on our agenda, the so-called consent agenda. Consent items are placed on our agenda because they believe to be non-contentious, yet they may warrant council's recognition and action. Grouping them expedites our business. However, any councillor wishing to extract an item from the consent agenda for discussion, debate, and individual action may do so. There are 11 items on our consent agenda for this evening. Included the minutes of our last regular council meeting. Councillors, anything to extract here or any correction to the minutes? Councillor Richardson?
Thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor, I'd like to extract item 7.7, Municipality of Wawa Volunteer Firefighter Tax Credit Bill C10, 310.
Sorry, what was that item again?
7.7.
7.7. Anyone else? Seeing none, Councillor Richardson?
Thank you again, through you. I think it's important to be able to provide our volunteer firefighters with the most tax credit that we can and provide a letter of support because the corporation of the municipality of Wawa had basically they increased the tax deduction from $3,000 to $10,000 for all volunteer firefighters. I would like to provide a letter of support into that as well and be circulate that to all necessary bodies that are also included in this motion here.
Okay. I take it you'll make that motion?
Absolutely.
A letter of support? So we have a mover. Councillor Richardson, can we have another seconder? Councillor Duncan? Let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Council, I do have a motion in front of me that Council items 7.1 to 7.11, excluding 7.7, be received for information in the minutes of the November 13th, 2023 regular council meeting be adopted. Moved by Councillor Andreessen, second by Councillor Anstett. Motion is carried. The minutes of the last meeting are approved, and consent items are received for information. At this time, it's proposed we moved to agenda number 8. For the purpose of executing a public meeting under the Planning Act, I use my discretion as head of council to announce a recess lasting the duration of a public meeting. Items to be considered in the said public meeting is ZBA-11-2023 related to lands described as East Part Lot 22, Concession 4, Elm Ward, Municipality of North Perth. For a public meeting, call this meeting to order. We're duly authorized to hold this public meeting for the purpose of a public meeting under the Planning Act. For the record, please note that Councillor Johnson. I now declare the recess period during a public meeting was held to be over, and note we will reconvene later into our meeting. Note that we recess at 7:12 for the public meeting. Welcome to those attending the public meeting pursuant to the Planning Act for a proposed amendment to the North Perth zoning bylaw. This is a statutory public meeting to deal with the application of zoning bylaw amendment, number ZBA 11-2023, affecting property owned by Sean and Amanda Cleland, described as East Part Lot 22, Concession 4, Elm Ward, Municipality of North Perth, 5261, line 81. Correspondence, reports, and comments received regarding this application will be considered by the council. Those in attendance remotely wishing to make comments concerning this application will be given the opportunity to do so. Anyone wishing to appeal council's decision in this manner must make verbal submissions during this public meeting or have made a written submission to council. Those wishing to receive notice of the decision regarding this application must notify the clerk via email or telephone giving their mailing address and telephone number. At this time, I will call for a summary of this application. This will be offered by Nathan Garland, planner for the County of Perth. Welcome, Nathan.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. I have a short presentation outlined for the subject application. So the application is ZBA 11-2023. The owner and applicants are Sean and Amanda Cleland. The agent is MHBC Planning. As mentioned, the location is East Park Lot 22, Concession 4, Elm Ward. There's just a map on the screen showing the subject property started and also highlighted there. You can see between Listowel and Atwood there, just to the east. Next slide. Just a couple aerial photos of the subject property. So the aerial photo to the left is outlined in yellow. That's the subject property. So the AGU lands are located in the northern part of the subject property. There is some NRE2 lands in the southern part of the property. The subject amendment only applies to the AE lands. So that's the agricultural lands. That's been highlighted on the right-hand side there. You'll see outlined in red. So that was part of the circulation that was distributed. Just a little bit of a sketch of the subject application. So to the left is the site plan that's been submitted. So the existing house, you'll see that's to the right-hand side. That's to the east. That is the driveway, and there's an existing house there. What's being proposed or considered as part of this application is you'll see the driveway coming in, the yard space around the shop, and then the shop itself. So that would be requested for the 2 additional businesses. And then there's just a photo of the shop that's there, or the shed that's there now with the public notice application in front of it. Next slide. So So as I mentioned, the outline of the subject property, or the outline of the minute area is an A-80, so it's a special zone to recognize the A or the businesses being proposed and requested. So I've just provided an outline of the 6 provisions that staff are recommending, including within the, thank you, included within the zone. So the requested amendments are for a secondary farm entrance, an allowance up to 4 non-farm, so those are 4 non-residential employees who do not live there, so they'd be off-site. Lot coverage not more than 2%, so the current application and request is below 2%, so it qualifies for that, but that's a cap. Up to 2 secondary farm occupations, where currently in the North Perth zoning bylaw allows for 1. A reduction in the MDS setback from 295, so the required 330 to 295. Also a note that no further MDS setbacks would be required as part of this application, so this does not impact any future agricultural expansion or barn expansion. And last, number 6, that no more than 6 vehicles be stored or displayed on the outdoor yards, save and except as what's required for staff parking. So that would just allow for kind of the management of the site and a little bit easier of the, just making sure that there's not too many vehicles in excess that spill over. Next slide, please. 2 photos of the subject property from line 81. One's looking east, just where the existing house is, you'll see that there, and then the shed's off to the right-hand side. And then there's just a photo looking south along on the western side. Just a little bit of an outcrop there, shows where some farm vehicles or some tractors and other equipment could enter in there, so it looks like it's a farm access as well too. The next slide, please. Just a summary of comments provided. So there one was a verbal comment that was provided from one of the neighbors. The concern was around the precedent of this application. There was a concern that there should only be 1 business as allowed in the zoning bylaw, and also a concern with the number of staff that are proposed. Next slide, please. So it is my recommendation to North Perth Council that they hold a public meeting for ZBA 1123, affecting lands described as East Part Lot 22, Concession 4, Elma Ward, Municipality of North Perth, Municipal Address 5621, line 81. And then this is just a little bit of a clarification. So we are asking for first and second reading, not third reading, and I'll explain that. And it is my recommendation that North Perth Council provide first and second reading for the accompanying zoning bylaw ZBA 1123, affecting lands described as East Part Lot 22, Concession 4, Elma Ward, Municipality of North Perth, 5621, line 81. Just for clarification, the 2 readings are for a show of support. So the third reading doesn't adopt it. The county official plan also has to be adopted prior to the zoning bylaw being adopted. I'm happy to address or answer any questions at this time.
Thank you. At this time, I'll ask the clerk to provide information regarding the notice of the public meeting.
Notices inviting persons to the public meeting were mailed on October 31st, 2023 by first-class mail to landowners within 120 meters of the subject property and emailed to all applicable agencies. The notice was posted on the website and on the subject property on October 31st, 2023, advising of the public meeting.
Thank you. I will now ask the planner and clerk if they received any correspondence, comments, or reports about this application.
No written comments have been provided, just verbal.
Thank you. We move on. Anyone wishing to make comments is now invited to do so. I will ask first those in favor, other than the applicant. Clerk?
Sorry, I have written correspondence here that was received Friday afternoon.
I would like you to read that aloud, please.
Okay. So this correspondence is from Doug Johnston, Mapleview Farms Incorporated. We have some concerns and questions about this application. We own the farm directly to the west of the affected property. We have no issue with business owners being allowed to operate on-farm diversified businesses, but are concerned when they grow to the size whereby they need more than the allowed 2 off-farm employees. We feel when businesses reach this size, they are better suited to be located in a settlement area with proper industrial commercial zoning. By allowing the increase in employees, it is setting a dangerous precedent for other business to follow in the future. We also have concerns about allowing two businesses to operate at the same location, once again setting the precedent for other businesses to follow. This precedent would then encourage fewer businesses to locate in our towns and hamlets in the future, and once again use more vulnerable farmland for large-scale buildings to be located on farms in the rural areas. In text of the application, it states that the flower shop will only sell flowers grown on-site. Knowing our climate and growing season in Perth County, that would only leave a portion of the calendar to sell flowers. We question how this would be monitored/enforced should the amendment be approved. Thank you for your time. Doug Johnston, Mapleview Farms.
Thank you, Clerk Carter. Anything else? Nothing further? Okay, now I will ask those in favor, other than the applicant, that would like to make comments now. Are there any opposed? Seeing none, the applicant or agent, please come forward, Pierre.
Is this on? Yep.
It is.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor, members of council. It's great to be back in person finally. It's been a while for me. Thank you, members of council, members of the public. My name is Pierre Chauvin with MHBC Planning, here on behalf of the Clelands who are here this evening, Sean and Amanda, and in support of the application. I just have a few slides I'll go through. Some of it is repetitious from what you've heard from Nathan already, so I'll try to go through them quickly. But again, this is the property in question. It's over 50 acres in size. There's a sizable frontage on line 81. The Clelands operate the dairy operation across the road. This proposed on-farm diversified use is actually operating across the road, and they're simply relocating to this property, which Sean and Amanda purchased a while back and are now in a position to move to this relocation. So I just wanted to point out this is an existing, certainly the mechanic shop is an existing operation on a dairy farm across the road on Sean's parents' farm. Lands are currently in agriculture use and will continue to do so. There's a rural residential dwelling, as you've heard, where the Clelands will reside. And there's a sizable woodlot, 20-acre woodlot in the rear of the property. This is for an on-farm diversified use, which is a kind of a different term that the county uses, but this is the provincial terminology now being applied to these types of uses that are intended to help supplement the farm income. And there are a number of criteria that the province has established to determine what is an on-farm diversified use. And I would submit that we meet all those criteria, and I'll just go through those later on in my presentation. But the proposal, yes, it is for two on-farm diversified uses. One is a mechanic shop, as I mentioned, and the other is a small flower shop. Next slide, please. These are just some images. You saw the actual photograph of the shop that has been built on the property. It looks much like a typical drive shed that you would see on any farm property. And that's really part of the intent of the on-farm diversified uses, is that you try to utilize existing buildings as much as possible and stay within a certain square footage or built area, which I'll speak to later. But these are just various elevations of the proposed building where the uses will be wholly contained within the building and no uses other than outdoor storage, which would be also contained, and I'll speak to that later, on site. But most of the uses will be contained fully indoors. Next slide. This is just a layout of the shop. The dark area outlined in the top corner is a mezzanine, and you can see the inset image. So again, all that area, other than the area in, I'll call it salmon or pink, the pink area would be the flower shop. The blue area would be the mechanic shop, and you can see the number of bays for the cars, for the mechanics to use. And so you can see on the slide that the large majority of the operation is the mechanic shop. Next slide. The lands are currently designated agriculture and zone agriculture. Again, I note the dates of these documents, 1999. As you know, they are somewhat dated. Don't reflect current provincial policy and terminology with respect to, as I mentioned, non-farm diversified uses. And obviously, and we hope that we all know the county is working on updating that official plan, and it'll come soon. And hopefully it'll reflect that new policy regime, similarly with your bylaw as well. Next slide. This is just a schematic of zooming in on what we're proposing. The house, existing house is in orange, and the existing shed where the mechanic and flower shop will be located are in blue. And you can see the farmland around it. The access, yes, there are two accesses. The second access will also function as the farm access. That's actually where it is today, and will continue to act as the farm access to crop the lands. What we're asking for is a minor reduction in MDS. Oops. And from 330 to 295 meters, that second driveway to permit the 4 instead of the 2 or employees that aren't residing in the house. A minor change in lot coverage to permit the use. And that 2%, and I'll speak to this on the next slide, relates to what how the province defines on-farm diversified uses. And then ultimately the other ask is to permit 2 instead of the 1 on-farm diversified use. Next slide. As I mentioned, the on-farm diversified use comes from the 2020 provincial policy statement, which is a lot more current than your official plan. And there is guidance material that the province has published with respect to how do we implement uses within prime agriculture areas, and it speaks specifically to how to deal with on-farm diversified uses. And there are a number of criteria within that guidance document that helps guide us planners on how to determine whether a use is an on-farm diversified use. So again, as I just pointing out, your official plan and zoning bylaw are predate this document. They certainly can be more restrictive, no doubt, but again, we hope that those documents will be updated in the very near future. Next slide. I think this is my last one. So these are some of the criteria that the province has listed in terms of how do you determine an on-farm diversified use. And there's 5 main criteria. And one, it has to be located on a farm, and that's exactly what this is. It's will continue to be a farm, and the lands will continue to be cropped as they are today. It has to be secondary to the principal agriculture use, and that again, the main use of the property is agriculture. The mechanic and flower shops will be the secondary use. And how does the province really limit that? They do that by a spatial area, and they prescribed that no more than 2% of your lot area should be devoted to an on-farm diversified use. It doesn't specify how many employees or how many businesses. It really just limits it to the area. So in essence, in theory, and these criteria apply across the province, you can have multiple on-farm diversified uses with multiple employees, but provided you meet that 2%, and in this case, it's only 4,000 square meters, then you're considered an on-farm diversified use, or at least it's limited in scale. And that's really the intent, is ensuring that it's limited in scale. And in this case, we comply with that, or with under that 2%. On-farm diversified uses includes home occupations, home industries. That's exactly what these things are. And they must be compatible with the surrounding agricultural operations. And part of that deals with the mechanic or the MDS application. I would submit it's a very minor intrusion in the MDS. But the other aspect, and this is the part that we take issue with, relates to the proposal to add a limitation on the parking of vehicles or storage of vehicles. Staff are recommending a maximum of 6 vehicles to be stored other than employee vehicles. We don't know where 6 came from. It seems to be a number pulled out of thin air. We feel that it's certainly more restrictive than it should be. We'd rather not have a limitation and believe it should be deferred to site plan. It's a matter of site plan. we're certainly willing, our client is willing to commit to store any vehicles that are kept there perhaps overnight behind the building so that's not visible from the traveling public. But to have a limitation on the number of vehicles is very problematic from a business standpoint, particularly when they're dealing with customers who they have no control of when they're going to pick up their vehicle. And as they drop off their vehicle overnight, they come, get it repaired during the day, and they leave it. Sometimes their clients don't come back for a week before they pick up their vehicle, and so it's very difficult for them to control that. However, how can we control that compatibility? Well, it's a visual in this case. Is it sure? Perhaps the intent is to ensure that it's not an unsightly situation. We can control that by placing these vehicles in a certain location so it's not, and also further perhaps through screening through the site plan process. So it would be my suggestion and recommendation that that portion of the bylaw not be included, and that we restrict that requirement through site plan control. Those are my comments, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Pierre. I guess I should ask first, is there anyone else that would like to speak? Seeing none, I'll open it up to council. First comments or questions? Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor, and greetings, council, members of the public. And thanks very much for your presentation, Pierre. Just a couple of questions about in the reports of the two businesses, the flower business that's talked about in the notice, that flowers sold at the proposed flower shop are to be grown on the property. My understanding is that Amanda is certainly very talented and sells more than just flowers grown on her property. There was an excellent article in the Rural Voice this summer, or not the Rural Voice, pardon me, the Rural Route, and about the business. And dahlias are grown on the site, and she sells these across the country, apparently. But I just, like, in terms of your justification document, it only talks about flowers grown on site. In addition, in your report, it talks about the sale of seed as well as implements and so on. So is that still the intent, or are you satisfied with respect to simply what's in the notice? I just want clarification on that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I apologize. I don't have the notice in front of me, so I don't know what it specifically says, but certainly I would stand behind what we have in our report.
Fair enough. So I'll just for information, I don't expect a response, but anyways, with respect to it says the flower shop would occupy approximately 33 square meters of the main floor and would include a flower cooler and work/sales area. The flowers sold at the proposed flower shop are to be grown on the property. So as I say, the reason, and I'm not going to get into a debate or anything about this, I just want, frankly, to make sure that your applicant or your client gets what they want in terms of being able to conduct the business. And if what the notice is not correct, I think we need to make sure that it is correct. But I do note in the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, there's no specific mention of that. So just for clarification, I just want to make sure that if it's a bit more broad interpretation, that I think for your client's perspective, I think I would want to make sure that the wording is in there so that if it is more than just flowers grown on the property, that in fact she's able to do that without a problem associated with it. That's all.
If I just, again, don't, through you, Mr. Chair, and acknowledge that Councillor Rothwell, but in terms of enforcement, as you know, go back to what the bylaw says, and there's no really stipulation in what the bylaw actually were. It doesn't say anything in here, so on that basis, I was satisfied that we didn't need to elaborate any further on that.
Just further, if I may, this is a very fine building, and I was called by the Clevelands to have a conversation with them this past summer, and just in terms of process and so on. I think the issue of concern that I have is in terms of, unfortunately for the applicants, or your clients, this process has taken a long time. And it's been very problematic. Significant funds have been invested for the business. And for various reasons, I guess, the application is not being heard until tonight. But I want to make sure that clearly there's a big difference between what North Perth is used to in terms of a, quote, secondary farm occupation with its limitations and what's being proposed here in terms of the on-farm diversified use. So, and that's not your client's issue, it's a policy issue, and it's a broad departure from where we've experienced since we've implemented the secondary farm occupations. In terms of the issues related to the business, again, as you said, it's a relocation. I do note in your reports on a couple different pages, it talks about that's a farm implement shed. Clearly, I think that's where there is, and even in the documentation associated with this application, is that clearly it's not a farm implement shed. I don't think it was ever intended to be a farm implement shed. My understanding is that Finlay Cleveland's is that they fully intended to proceed with relocating the existing business, which is well known and established here in our community, to this site onto their own property. So I just want to make sure that it's clear in terms of documentation is that this is not a repurposing of an existing building. This building was purpose designed and built as what we see here today, and if council does approve, then that business would move forward. In terms of precedent and so on, I think we all know that every application speaks for itself. There are issues of concern in terms of how we look out of our number of employees and so on, but I still view this as relatively small scale in my view, like in terms of overall operationally. Certainly the flower shop, I think in your own documentation, Pierre, in your justification report, at one point, at least the slide I saw, it talks about the flower shop being a home occupation. So that's clearly different than a on-farm diversified use, and it's something that's actually permitted, but within the dwelling as opposed to inside the building. Certainly small scale from that standpoint, but clearly the main use of this site, is, as you saw on the slide you pointed out, is going to be the mechanic shop. And hopefully we can address the issues of concern in terms of parking, and I fully understand what you said from your client's perspective is that they have only some control with their clients as to whether when they're dropping off and picking up. I think the issue of concern is those number of vehicles. And as I say, if council can be satisfied in terms of how you're proposing to address the location of those cars and so on, that hopefully would be addressed. But clearly, some of the issues of concern that I've heard in our community is in terms of how this application was dealt with. And we've heard from staff in terms of process, how this has been dealt with, and hopefully we'll get to a satisfactory resolution for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rothwell. Councillor Andreessen?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, I just want to thank Pierre Chauvin for your presentation this evening. And what I appreciated most was your identification of the criteria for on-farm diversified use. I think that this application does fit very nicely with the criteria that you had presented. And I actually think that it's important that we, of course, respect farmland, and which I think this application does, but it also provides our residents with an opportunity to have diversified occupations so that they can supplement their income along with doing agricultural practices. So for me, I think that I definitely would support this application. Thank you.
Thank you. If I may, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and sorry, it was meant to respond to some of the comments that Councillor Rothwell made, and I appreciate his thoroughness in reviewing my report, which is great. I love to hear that. The reality, yes, this building was built, purpose-built, but the nice thing is it's built that it could be repurposed to be used for agriculture, and that's really part of the intent of the criteria is utilizing existing barns or structures so that it can be, if it does, they do move on, they expand and go into listable and then that operation, that building can be used as a farm implement or whatever. So that's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Pierre. Councillor Blazek?
Thank you, and through you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you for your report. I just want to touch on something that was said in some comments from a community member and also touched on by Councillor Rothwell. As far as policing and or monitoring the flowers that are sold in the shop, the application, when you read it and reread it like I have, does not say that they only plan on selling flowers that are grown in the shop. The word only is not in that application in any capacity. It doesn't even say that the flowers are to be grown on the shop. The words that we choose matter, and I just wanted to clarify that those words aren't in here. So I don't believe that policing or monitoring the flowers that are specifically sold needs to be a municipal issue should this application be approved. And I do very much support this application.
Thank you, Councillor Blazek. Anyone else like to make first comments or questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Pierre.
Thank you.
Notice of the decision of Council will be given in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. Council's decision is subject to the appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal in accordance with provisions of the Planning Act. I now declare this recess period, during which a public meeting was held, to be over, and note that we have reconvened into our regular meeting at 7:42. No, excuse me, we still have a couple. Okay, we have some business arising out of this. The first one is that North Perth Council acknowledges that a public meeting was held for ZBA-11-23 affecting lands described as East Part Lot 22, Concession 4, Elma Ward, Municipality of North Perth, 5621, line 81. I need a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Blazek, second by Councillor Duncan.
I'm in favor of Deputy Mayor not having described issues.
Okay. And that is carried. The second resolution that I have is that North Perth Council provides a first and second reading for the accompanying bylaw for ZBA-11-23, affecting lands described as East Part Lot 22, Concession 4, Elma Ward, Municipality of North Perth, 5621, line 81. Moved by Councillor Andreessen, second by Councillor Blazek.
I'm in favor again, Deputy Mayor.
Okay, please record that. And that is carried 7-1. Please invite Councillor Johnson back in. We have a delegation to council tonight. I'll remind the delegation that in accordance with this council's procedural bylaw, a total of 10 minutes per delegation is permitted. And that includes both presentation time and providing an opportunity for councillors to ask questions. Each delegation is to present on the topic declared on the submitted request for delegation forms, and deviations from the topic are not acceptable to the chair or this council. As always, we expect respect and courtesy. We're joined first by Mike Enright, Shoshana Pasternak, and Jason Woods, representing a coalition of companies who are proposing the location of a battery energy storage system in North Perth. Welcome to the team. I yield the floor for the presenter.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, Council, thank you for having us again and taking the time this evening. We are here to speak further to our Palmerston Energy Storage Project and continue to be available to answer any questions. This project is answering the call from the province to address significant electricity system needs from 2025 onwards due to economic and population growth, expiring contracts, and the decommissioning of Pickering Nuclear Station, which provides a large percentage of the power supply in the province. The North American Electricity Reliability Corporation, using ISO data, reported their long-term reliability assessment that Ontario is entering a period where demand for electricity may exceed supply. The NERC risk determination for Ontario jurisdiction shows the reserve margin to be inadequate. One of 2 jurisdictions in all of North America to have such a poor rating. In the near term, peaks are expected to remain fairly flat before increasing in the later 2020s. Peaks are expected to increase over time, and by 2025, the reserve margin will be inadequate. In addition to addressing province-wide needs, we also confirmed that based on system configuration and the amount of load that is served by Palmerston, a battery energy storage facility would benefit the area should an outage occur upstream from the Palmerston 115 kV station. We appreciate the time staff dedicated to producing the council report for our project, which seeks to address safety and financial concerns the council raised last week. We believe the report reflects an honest and fair view of the project. While there's still work to be done on the permitting side, staff have reflected on the potential benefit this project could have to the local community and beyond. Staff will be presenting the report and speak in more detail, but we want to highlight the aspects we think are very important in response to your concerns last week. At present, staff do not foresee any safety, environmental, or financial issue that would not be addressed either by future North Perth processes or other regulatory agency processes. Our facility will be designed in accordance with the Ontario Building Code, National Fire Protection Association standards. An emergency response plan will be developed in collaboration with local first responders, and we will be responsible for the cost to upgrade the municipal road to allow all season maintenance and appropriate emergency access. In addition, we wanted to reiterate that we intend to create a community benefit fund, which ensures the community not only benefits from the facility's local energy and system improvements, but community initiatives will also directly benefit financially from the project being developed here. Our commitment to community engagement was reflected in our public meeting we held a few weeks ago. We had a robust conversation and everyone at the meeting had their questions answered. We commit to continued community engagement should we win a contract with the ISO. In addition, we heard your concerns about agricultural land use and we've spoken to the landowner to give their view. They shared a letter that they wanted us to present today. Their son is actually here today. If you don't mind, he'll come up and read the letter from his parents.
Welcome.
Hello, Deputy Mayor and councillors. Yeah, my parents fell ill. They tested positive for COVID this weekend, so they were planning on coming, but they had a nice statement prepared for you guys. Wanted to let them know how they felt. We, the Mallet family, as long-time owners and caretakers of this farm, Greg Mallet, our son, together with his son, represent the 5th and 6th generations. The farm is not high-value cropland that will be permanently taken out of production. In fact, most acres that proposed energy storage facility will occupy are used for grazing. Regardless, the farm is important to us and who we are. For example, if a subdivision was proposed to us requiring the sale or carving up of the property, we would not agree to it. Clearly, the modern lifestyle we all enjoy in this province depends on reliable flow of electricity. And we need to remember the 2003 brownout to know how true that is. As this facility will help maintain a reliable flow It is an important piece of infrastructure that will benefit us all. We also note that an energy storage facility has a minimal footprint compared to new natural gas, nuclear, or other energy infrastructure. You should know that our business relationship with them, Inver Energy, has been direct and responsive. They communicate well and respond promptly, and have attended to all obligations fully and in a timely manner. Further, they have requested and applied to the project to our knowledge of the property and community. You would be aware that originally the facility was sited adjacent to the HONI substation, but due to new setbacks, a more remote site proposed was required. Inver Energy requested our opinion regarding the proposed site moved to the east edge of the farm. They received, considered, and accepted our recommendation, which was to move it to the presented proposed site at the south end of the farm, where it would be largely hidden and further away from local residents. As owners, we have property rights. We also can choose whether we want to support or object to how we use our land. We choose to fully support Inver Energy facility and urge council to do the same. Understand that unlike conversion of land to residential or other permanent use, this is a temporary arrangement. Within 1 or 2 more mallet generations, we will see the removal of the facility and return these acres to agricultural use. Thank you for the opportunity to provide our views and register our support for the approval of the Inver Energy proposal. So I'm actually I live on the farm, so I support it as well. They've done a very good job answering our questions, our concerns, and if we had any questions or concerns, we wouldn't be bringing this forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Again, we appreciate the time everyone has taken to listen to us and taken the time to reflect on our presentation from last week and today's delegation as well. We're happy to take any questions. Me, Mike, and Jason are available. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, open the floor up. First comments or questions for our presenters this evening. Councilor Nordin.
Thanks to you, Deputy Mayor. Can you pull that picture up, please? So, which section here is pasture and which one is cropland?
Present here. So where they have the black, so from, I guess it would be the north side, right through to the dark green. So basically this year it was oats and peas, and then it was hay, and then the other spot there, the brown spot, was pasture this year as well. And then the other spot over there is pasture. So what we've talked to them about was, that's the whole proposed land. They're trying to use the pasture land first. So I think that's a 15-acre parcel that's there.
Of which we're
you're probably going to use 10. So that's to keep the in-use farmland that's not grazed. Yeah, from growing up, that's always been pasture as long as I've been around. So.
Supplementary?
Yep. Are you sure it's always been cropland? Like, I've heard from other landowners it's been pasture for 5 or 6 years now.
So the green area has been pasture for 40, 50 years. The other land has been, it was pasture probably 15 years ago, and then they cropped, my dad cropped it for 5 years, and then it went back to pasture for the rental, or for rental use.
So could it all be used as crop production land?
Pardon?
Could all that land be used for crop production?
It could be, yep.
Okay, thank you.
It just, in the top end by the bush there is very, very sandy. It's been like in pasture for a number of years.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Johnston?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you. I know you held a public meeting. I'm just questioning, did any of the neighbors, were they notified before that public meeting or like a one-to-one visit with what the project was before that public meeting?
So we did notify them as per the RFP requirements. The RFP actually calls out specifically not to have one-on-one meetings. Or not that you can't, it's they didn't want to see that. They wanted to see a public meeting where it was presented and there was a public answer.
Okay.
Question period.
Second question, as you can tell from my questions, I am a farmer, so I value the farmland. We talk a lot around this table about intensification and making lots smaller and chewing up less farmland. Could this project take up less footprint if it was, why couldn't we go 2 high with the batteries or 3 high with the batteries and take up 5 less acres?
So I believe we have Reza on the line and he's the design engineer and he could speak to why we can't go high.
Okay, could we bring him
Can
on?
people on the call hear me?
Yeah, if you can speak up just a little bit, Reza.
For sure, absolutely. So Mike's right. I am one of the design engineers on this project. We've pondered the idea of stacking batteries before. The issue comes with really structural considerations at that point. These batteries are quite heavy. They fit well in the containers they're designed for, but to this date, we haven't seen a product that competently shows that it can stack much higher to save space like you described.
Okay. Anyone else wish to make comments or have questions? Seeing none, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Council, in front of me, I do have a couple resolutions. Yes.
I think you'll probably want to do the staff report first and then the rest.
Staff report? Yeah. So the resolution says here that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receives the Palmerston Storage Centre report for information.
So that'll be after CAO Snell's presentation.
So this was in the wrong spot. No worries. So then just the 8.2 one for now?
I think you'll probably want to consider them at the same time.
Okay, we will hold that as well. Okay, that brings us to item 9, reports from the department's key staff. We have one item to consider from Development and Protective Services Department. Is item 9.1.1 CO Snell brings to the table report requesting at our last meeting pertaining to staff perspectives on the battery energy storage system proposed for the northernmost environs of North Perth. I'll call on CAO Snell to do the presentation.
Good evening, members of council. On the line virtually is Chief Pape, and she certainly wrote majority of the report with my assistance in some of the follow-up. And I'm just going to lead off. I'm going to ask Chief Pape to talk about the fire safety protection components, and then I will wrap up. As from last delegation from the proponents, staff was asked to prepare a report on some of the safety, environmental, and financial concerns. Certainly with a limited time between this meeting and the last meeting, we did our best to do some research, provide council with some information, and our comments are in the report. And I'll just ask Chief Pape to start off if she wants to discuss the fire safety and protection aspect.
Thanks, Chris. Bear with me, the audio is a bit choppy on my end. So thanks very much for the opportunity to speak to this. As CEO Snell mentioned, we have had an opportunity to take a look and do some research. There are a number of pieces that a number of regulations and standards that do allow us to feel some comfort with this project. The project would be designed within the provisions of NFPA 855, which does include the need for detection and potentially on-site water, which the proponent has suggested they are, there's no problem with them providing those things, as well as any cost for training our first responders. Road access was another concern that we had, and as the presentation a little earlier this evening shed light that they are willing to take that on as well. So our concerns will be dealt with through the permitting process and the proper planning process.
Thank you.
So secondly, I can touch on the road access. Certainly access will be covered either through future planning applications or site plan control. And we would continue to have those conversations on who's responsible, because currently that road 152 is a no winter maintenance road, so that would have to be something that would have to be considered through that process. In consultation with the planning staff, the process itself would either need to go through County of Perth planning processes such as an OPA, or through an environmental assessment process, which of course, as we know, has lots of opportunities for the public to comment. So through all our research, what really we have found is that although no development application, especially industrial or commercial, comes without some risk, we are pretty confident that this sort of application does not bring any more risk that won't be addressed through either our own processes, the processes of the applicant, or provincial or federal authorities. I did provide some information that the IESO did present at a recent CIO's conference regarding the requirements for electricity and the future requirements for electricity in Ontario, as well as a video on their site regarding battery installations. Again, the applicant spoke about the development of community benefit fund, and certainly those conversations would continue to be had if the applicant is successful in their RFP process. So just summarizing staff's thoughts at this time is, again, we feel that there is very early on in the process, there will be a number of regulatory processes this application or development will have to go through. And so at this time, but we feel fairly comfortable that all the concerns that were raised by council can be addressed through a future process. Thank you. Certainly able to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you, Chris. Council, any further comments? We'll start off with Councillor Andreessen.
Yes, thank you, through you, Deputy Mayor Kellum. CEO Snow, I just had a question just about process. I believe the resolution coming up is just to receive the report. Is that correct?
There's a resolution to receive this report, and then there's also a resolution to consider the resolution that the proponent would like council to consider.
Okay. Thank you. That's helpful.
Okay. Anyone else? Councillor Rodham again.
This question is directed to the chief. Have you heard of any sort of lithium fires from other municipalities in Ontario and how they've dealt with it?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Kellum. Yes, there definitely have been fires involving lithium-ion batteries. It more so specific to one battery as opposed to a storage facility. The storage facilities are highly regulated as opposed to an individual vehicle fire or a battery being used for a scooter. Those are different. I am not aware of a fire at a facility. Councillor, but definitely there are more commonly spoke about are the fires that involve individual batteries.
Supplementary? This might not be a question, but during high school and well after, I worked for a custom farmer, and I've been on this farm multiple occasions, probably about 5 or 8 years ago, doing work for the farmer who rents the land. And I would argue that most of the land that's being taken over is some of the best land in the township. The farm is currently organic. We'll use corn as a reference right now because it is the season. So this farm, on average, was around 160 bushel organic corn, and that could be conventional would be well over 200. So I'm sorry to disagree with the Mount family, but I have to say that this is some high value land. I've had many conversations with neighbors, especially the neighbor to the south who farms a few thousand acres, and he said that the farm that borders this one is some of the best farmland he has. Not to mention there's drainage mains going through that proposed area that I assume will have to be moved. Last meeting, I showed council solar panel contracts, all the neighbors from the north, the south, the east, and the west that were given these contracts and hope for them to sign for their farmland. I still assume that this battery center is step one. Even the company representative said that they work coherently. So I will have to say to council, this project and possibly solar panels do not belong here, class 1, North Perth, Earth. They do not belong close to livestock operations. If I was some of the livestock owners for the dairy, the hog barns close by, I would not sleep at night. So I think we should leave this land as prime agriculture and use it as the best solar panels that I know, which is green plants. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Norden. Anyone else? Councillor Blazik? You were. One moment. There we go.
Thank you, and through you, Deputy Mayor. I still have fire concerns. I'm wondering, I know that the team involved with this project explained to us that they had tested for fire, that they had measured the time that it takes for fire response, and I'm just wondering if you can provide any information, Chief Pape, and I have a feeling that you cannot, in the environment where they're running a fire test, the controls in that environment, and how it compares to the response in a rural community where fire response is significantly more spread out and you don't have advance notice to the fact that a fire is going to start.
Chief Pape? Volume?
I apologize. Through you, Deputy Mayor Calvin. I don't have those specific test numbers that you're looking for, Councillor Blazik. I wouldn't have those available to me. I can tell you that the facility will have to be designed in accordance with some pretty heavy regulation that would require automatic detection. And that detection would notify the facility if there is heat, if the facility is heating up, which is always the concern. The design would also require that the facility be climate controlled. And so if that heat did start to increase, that it would be climate controlled that way. As the proponent spoke to us at last council, they did advise that there's not a number of staff who will be working here. They'll be working in a separate building, and so the risk to human life is low. And that's always something we look at when we are looking at facilities of industrial nature. This isn't something that is going to be a huge employer, and so there is not a life risk there, and that's something that ratchets down the risk level. Our fire response in this area would be provided, as the report implies. It would be the responsibility of Minto Fire to respond to this under a fire protection agreement. We have included Minto Fire in our conversations with the proponent, and they raised similar concerns to us. The questions that we asked during those calls were answered with factual data. And also the other piece that I think is relevant to the conversation is that we do have a current contract with GFL Environmental. So if there were to be a fire at this facility, it would be handled under that contract. So the costs for response, the cost to remediate that property would be billed back to the property owner. They would not be borne by the municipality. So just another important risk management piece for us.
Thank you. Are you satisfied? Councillor Richardson?
Thank you. And through you, Deputy Mayor Kellum, just a question I'm not sure if Chris can answer, possibly our guest could answer. How was the project, how did it come about to be 86 megawatt? And a secondary to that, like, is that is that like the smallest version that is done? Is it the largest? For other battery storage facilities that exist, how does this one rate in in actual size or footprint as compared to others that exist or that are also in the pipeline for going for approval?
I would suggest, Deputy Mayor, that the proponent probably could answer that question better than myself. So, if the pleasure of council, if that's okay.
Perfect, yes. Come forward.
Yeah, so these batteries can scale. So I would say in the last procurement, we saw 5 megawatts being procured in an urban environment, and then upwards of 300, 350 megawatts being procured in a rural environment.
Supplementary to that, thank you for that answer. Just so, where did the 86 come from? Like for the need of the area, for what was needed, like.
Yeah, so it's actually entirely contemplated on the available transmission capacity that's on that 115 kV, and that's where the 86 comes from. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Rothwell?
Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor. And I believe that this will go through to the applicants here, but we heard from the owners of the property, the Mallets, that they intend, if the project is approved, only to have, as I understand in their letter, one term, so 21 years. My understanding of the documentation that you've supplied is that the need for additional energy storage is going to be ongoing. What is the likelihood of your, pardon me, let's put it this way. Do you have a desire as a company to see the extension of an agreement beyond 21 years in order to address the energy needs in Ontario, or are you satisfied if you do get approval for a 21-year lease only?
So I will make note that we don't at this time. And with respect to the approvals, there may be a need to have a greater than 21-year lease, but that's a result of development period leading up to the eventual actual operation of the facility itself, if that makes sense.
Just for clarification then, so whatever the term is, I believe that my recollection was 21 years for a lease, but is the lifespan of the batteries and so on, what is that lifespan then?
So the lifespan is the term of the contract. I mean, that's ultimately their useful life. The contract, I believe, is 20 years.
Okay.
Yeah, but the term of the lease is actually a totally different subject as far as based on the Planning Act, the requirements of the Planning Act, when the clock starts on that versus the actual contract itself, two very different things.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. So my recollection of your presentation was that you can swap out these batteries and so on. So if those batteries that go in at the start, if they are at the end of their life, is it the potential that you could swap out those batteries, so we could see a perpetual usage of this property as an ongoing battery storage facility. Is that right or not?
So all I can say is the contract is for 20 years. What will happen in 20 years is unknown to me at this time. The contract is for 20 years, and that's what our plans are.
Fair enough. I'll leave that. Thank you.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else? Okay.
Thank you, Council.
Start off with the first resolution, Council. That the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receives the Palmerston Energy Storage Centre report for information. Moved by Councillor Rothwell, second by Councillor Richardson. Okay, please note that. And that is carried. Second resolution. Whereas the proponent is proposing to construct and operate a long-term reliability project as defined and with the characteristics outlined in the table attached under the long-term request for proposals, LT1 RFP, issued by the Independent Electrical System Operator, IESO. And whereas pursuant to the LTI RFP, proposals that receive the formal support of the local jurisdictional authorities of all the project communities in which the long-term reliability project is located in the form of a support resolution be awarded rated criteria points for the purpose of ranking the proposal in relation to the other proposals for a contract under the LT1 RFP. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth supports the development, construction, and operation of the long-term reliability project on the municipal lands. This resolution's sole purpose is to enable the proponent to receive rated criteria points under LT1 RFP or to satisfy its obligations under any awarded LT1 contract and may not be used for the purpose of any other form of approval in relation to the proposal or long-term reliability project or for any other purpose. Rated criteria points will be used to rank the proponent's proposal in relation to the other proposals received by the IESO under the LT1 RFP. May I have a mover, please? May I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Richardson. Seconder, Councillor Blazek. Let's have the vote. And that is defeated. Moving on, next are reports from the Corporate Services Department. In item 9.2.1, our clerk, Sarah Carter, brings to the table the finalized report of a consultant commissioned by this council who has been at work looking at reviewing community and council input and developing revised models for council composition for the next municipal election to take place in 2026. I'll call Ms. Carter first to introduce guests that will present this report.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Callum, through you to members of council. As you all remember, at the July 10th, 2023 council meeting, the consultant team from Watson and Associates was given direction to proceed with Phase 2 of the council composition and ward boundary review. Phase 2 focused specifically on ward boundary. The final report that was included in your agenda package for tonight was prepared by the consultant team with input from the community through various forms of public engagement. Here to present the final report and outline the options in front of council are Josh Valenti from Watson & Associates and Dr. Robert Williams.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor, members of council. We're back again. In the interests of moving the discussion along, we have a small presentation, but we don't need to go through that if there's no real interest. We have talked about a lot of this a couple or three times. We can certainly summarize what is here in the report, but I'll defer to council. If you want the presentation, we'll go through it. If not, you've seen the report, and we can certainly speak to the main document if that's your preference.
Council, what is your wish? Councillor Andreessen?
Through you, Mayor, Deputy Kelm, I'm just wondering, for the interest of the public, if it would be important to have that presentation this evening so that they can reference it, perhaps see it on YouTube if they're not here this evening. I think it may be wise to have the presentation, but that's just my idea. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone opposed to that? Councillor Richardson?
I'm not opposed, but
go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, I agree. I think the presentation is important, and I'm just thinking for time because this is an incredibly important decision for the municipality. Going through the highlight points would be of benefit, but I would propose, and I'll bring forward, and it's only my opinion, that I would think that so the public can engage on YouTube, there's a possibility of bringing this forward for a special meeting of council, that this is all the only thing that's on the agenda. I'm not trying to bump it out of the way. It's incredibly important, but I think it's going to generate such significant conversations that we would need to go through it again. That's only my 2 cents. This is monstrous for the entire community and this council to go through it again. I would certainly like to hear some of the high-level points going forward, but I think that would be incredibly important for the community at large and this council to host a second meeting at a time to be governed by everybody. And this would be the only thing that would be on the agenda to give it complete and thorough analysis.
Okay.
My 2 cents.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. Anyone else in support of that? Okay. What would you like him to give a...
Absolutely. I wouldn't do that. I'm just thinking for the exhaustive, the very long presentation to do that separately, but by all means, I certainly would.
Well, if that's your preference, then we will walk through this presentation. We intended it to be... There we are, sorry. We intended this to be a prelude to some direction tonight, but obviously that's not going to be the case. So we'll still give you the overview and work with staff and others to make another visit and get to that full discussion. All right. The slide presentation then starts with a quick overview of the points that the acting clerk made a moment ago. We came to you in July at the end of what we called phase 1 of this review and sought your direction on certain aspects of your governance structure and electoral system that we had been examining for quite a long time. Basically, there were 3 broad determinations that came out of that, and this slide covers it. First of all, there was support for maintaining a ward system to elect councillors in North Perth. In other words, we're not going to eliminate wards and have everybody elected at large. There would be some, as we'll see in the second line here, some would be elected at large, but councillors themselves would continue to be elected in wards. So that was the first step. The second step did involve a change from the current arrangement, namely the suggestion that both a deputy mayor and the county councillor would be elected at large. That position we refer to as a councillor at large. So a councillor at large sitting on county council and ward councillors elected in wards. So that decision, that was part of the direction we were given in July and led to this activity. So the other part of the direction was that we would devise some wards that could lead to up to a 10-member council. And so again, 3 positions at large, 2 already existing, a third created, 7 wards electing councillors. So the number of seats around the table would not change. There'd be a slight change, though, in the way those some of those positions are filled. And as you'll see with the report, of course, the ward councillors in future would be elected in single-member wards. Again, that was part of what we were directed to look at in July. And we spent a fair bit of time in phase 1 looking at some of the dilemmas that we felt came out of your current structure, which has does not have a uniform number of councillors per ward. Let's remember again, over and over again, this is not about you. This is not about you people and how well or otherwise you do your job. We're confident that that's going on. We're talking about changing the way councillors relate to their community and the way the community relates to council. So coming out of that July 10th meeting then, we are designing wards. So it's a different exercise based on 4 major guiding principles that are widely used in electoral decisions across Ontario and beyond. And the 4 are listed there in probably roughly priority order, although in the end they are all blended together. It's not driven by one single principle, but by a combination. So representation by population or population parity is the dominant theme that we try to work with as best we can. It'll never be perfect, but we work with that. The second principle is based on the fact that you don't want to have to do this after every election or necessarily every second election. We know that at the federal level, electoral boundaries are reviewed every 10 years. Your boundaries haven't been reviewed in over 20 years. So this is a case of catching up, but also anticipating where your community's going to be over the next 2 to 3 elections. We're working with a 3-election horizon, but if in time that does not appear to work, you can certainly do it again sooner than that. It's not necessary. But we're looking at where the growth is going to be and try to build that into the wards that we design. The third one shifts from the point of view of individuals to groups or communities or neighborhoods, whatever label we might want to use. We try to work with the representation of what are called communities of interest. Those are fairly imprecise ideas, but it's really around neighborhood connections, communication, those kinds of things, so that the ward is composed of neighborhoods and groups that have some connection to one another and often have similar characteristics, again, as best that can be accomplished. And then finally, the use of geographical and topographical features as boundaries is sort of a kind of an insider part of it. Where do you draw the line, if I can call it that? Many municipalities have ended up with ward boundaries that follow, for example, property lines. So they zigzag all over the place. It's very confusing where the boundary is. We try to look for lines that are clear and obvious as best we can. So again, we've got to bundle all these together in some fashion with the ultimate goal that we call here the overarching principle of effective representation, which is a theme that comes out of an important case heard by the Supreme Court of Canada dealing with representation and inequality. Not strictly equality, but effective representation, that is the balance between all of these factors and the relationship that goes on between elected officials and constituents over the course of the term of office. What is the relationship? How many constituents does an elected official have? How many people are trying to catch the ear of a councillor? How many people does the councillor need to stay in touch with? Things of that sort are part and parcel of the idea of effective representation. So our exercise is to try to put all of those together and evaluate options to do that. We started, of course, with those same principles on and applied them to the present boards. And we discovered, and again, the full report is there on the website from phase 1 and from phase 2, making, I think, in our view, unmistakable representation by population is not present in your current system. It is also not suitable for growth. It is not one that addresses that. It does protect communities of interest if you think of communities of interest strictly in terms of the 3 pre-amalgamation municipalities. Whether that is still the only or dominant community of interest is an open question. But yes, it does that, but it doesn't do the other things. So my first point would be a system that only does that is probably certainly not going to give you effective representation. The boundary lines are pretty simple. Line 86, that's about it. That part is not a big issue. But in looking at the present boards, our conclusion was we need to do some thinking about that. And again, we came in to you in July and got some direction to try to say, let's see what else we can do and apply the same principles. I'm going to ask Josh Valenti here to speak to the next part of the presentation, and probably right through to the end, actually. I'll step back.
Awesome. Thanks, Bob, and good evening, everyone. So we did 2 phases of public engagement, one back in the summer through phase 1. We had in-public meetings as well as some virtual surveys that went around. To round 1, we had 21 responses to the survey, and we asked questions such as, is council the right size? Do we want to go to at-large systems, similar to what we reported back in the spring there, or in the summer there, which Bob kind of alluded to. And then came round 2, which we completed here in the fall. We had double the responses to over 50 responses for this round, looking at 3 different options that we presented as preliminary options. All with similar things in mind, but some tweaks between each of those options, which we got feedback for, and then we looked to finalize those options as what we see the report as these final 2 options. So skipping to the final 2 options, recommended option 1 is the same option that we presented as preliminary option 1, having 1 ward in the north for Wallace, 4 wards around the Listowel area, and 2 wards in the south. What we can see here is using Road 72 on the south boundary for Ward 7, we do start to divide Newry there to some degree. And then within Listowel, we use the Wallace Avenue as the east-west split as well as Main Street, but we actually drop Main Street down to Elma Street within the Listowel community. One part of the feedback that we heard around here is using line 87 as those northern boundaries for wards 2 and 3. It captured that community that has, let's say, sprawled within or beyond the Listowel community that is currently used as that boundary in today's system. From a population standpoint, currently in 2023, there is 3 of the 7 wards outside of that optimal range, that plus or minus 25%. But with that in mind, we are planning to have those grow in as new population comes in. We end up with 2 above the optimal range, with 1 falling right within the optimal range of 5%, which we can see there in the green, being Ward 3. With that being said, we do look at Ward 7 there, the yellow or the gauge ward in the center there around Newry. It's a little on the higher side, but as we look at the option 2 here, if we flip to option 2, we do look to capture 2 of those situations that we kind of look at in option 2, with dropping the southern boundary of line of Ward 7 down to line 71 to capture Newry in its entirety. With that being said, population, again, is a little above that threshold, so we look to reduce some of that population, bringing Ward 1 south of line 86 down to line 87 there, so a little shift in that, but trying to capture that community of Newry all within Ward 7 there. And this does result in also a Ward 6 population, that dark blue one in the south, being significantly under that optimal range now and in the future, but it really does keep that rural community tied into one option, or one ward per se there. So those are the two options that we had presented through some community feedback, and I'll throw it back over to Bob if there's anything to add on those ones. Thank you.
Just a couple of thoughts that are found in the final report. In the view of the consultant team, either of these options would be an acceptable arrangement should this bylaw be appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal. We believe that both of these are defensible. They are different, and that's part of the point about blending those principles together, looking at how you try to capture growth, perhaps as opposed to the present present numbers on issues of that sort. So it's not that they are completely different. They're working with your community and the information we've got about where the population is now, where it's going, its history, all those kinds of things. But it's built on that with slight emphasis on the other principles. I want to just make a couple of other quick comments here. The second one works around the process of growing into parity rather than achieving it now, and that's the same point. It's not strictly about growing into parity, but it provides, if you look at those figures on the right side, it's reflecting a better balance over time. And that's a principle that has been upheld by the Land Tribunal in very important ward boundary cases, in particular the case involving the City of Toronto before the 2018 election. That was an option that was driven by growing into parity and was supported by the Land Tribunal as a valid approach to representation. The other point, and I can perhaps anticipate where some comments might come, the public participation has not been overwhelming. We know that. This is not a topic that a lot of people get interested in. Those of you who are on the table care the most about it. It's one of the reasons we're doing the job and not you, so that when we get to the end of it, it can't be appealed on the grounds of self-serving members of council. Again, that's one of the reasons why there is an appeal process. And I'm not saying that would be part of what you're doing here, but the low participation rate is always a concern, and we've spent a lot of effort to try to be as creative and as extensive as we can to reach out to the community to do that. I would not want you to see this as a referendum, to say, oh, the community said X, and therefore that's what we need to pick. It's really a case of some insight. And even though we had modest participation in our engagement, we learned a lot about the community, and we learned what we could do to fix those preliminary options to make them a bit better. That was what that was about, not looking for approval by some kind of majority vote or whatever. It was to look at how we would enhance the options we're giving to you. So that's what is going on right here. So they're there for your guidance. And I would suggest, Councillor Richardson, if you're holding another meeting with the public involved, we also keep that in mind. It's helping people appreciate what's here and provide you with some thoughts about what the implications may be. I suspect that most of you have a pretty good idea of what that might look like already, but if you want to do that through consultation, that's certainly appropriate to make sure that in the end, the decision you make is not going to be the subject to a review that would be costly and time-consuming and not really in anyone's best interest. As I said, we think that picking either one of them would be upheld. So that's we're giving you a product that we believe is worth picking, and either one of them would do. So just those are the, I think, the main other additional comments I'd like to make. So if there are any questions now, let's turn to that, please.
Okay. Thank you. Council, any questions at this time, or do you want to wait until, okay. Councilor Andreessen?
Thank you, through you, Deputy Mayor Kellum. I know that I had a conversation with you folks during your presentations, and one of the things that we talked about, and it'll be important for the public to understand, is that if all of us as local politicians today wanted to run again, because of the massive changes in this ward system, it would be permissible for us to run in any one of those wards, even though we don't live in that ward. Can you comment on that?
Item number one on my notes that I didn't actually use. Candidates do not need to run in the ward they seek to represent. A candidate merely needs to be a registered elector in the municipality. The ward boundary is not a place that you must live in to run. For some people, that's seen as an advantage, but it's not a case of having to only run in an area where you live. This is a process that is standard across Ontario. You qualify as a candidate by being an elector in the municipality, wherever it may be. And in fact, in some cases, you don't even have to live there. You're perhaps a seasonal resident, you own property, you're qualified to vote, you can be a candidate. So that's an important part. This is not about parceling out the municipality to 7 people who happen to live in those seven particular wards that we're suggesting here. On the flip side, of course, and this is part of why we got into this, electors only get to vote for one councillor. And that is, again, a big concern we had in evaluating your current system. Some residents of North Perth get to elect or vote for 3 councillors, others only get to vote for 2. There are other cases where it's even more extreme. But it's a case of saying in this approach, everybody is treated the same way. You get to vote for one councillor at the end of the day and not favoring some parts of the municipality over others. Again, in our first phase report, we talked about why that was the decision or the arrangement made at amalgamation and tried to suggest, I hope, in a clear way, why you need to move away from that.
Thank you.
Councilor Anstad?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Kellum, through you. Thanks, Dr. Williams, for your report. A lot of work's gone into this, and it's really very much appreciated. We did have some correspondence just about the boundaries, and thank you for responding to me on that. My question is just surrounding population, and I'll note in your recommended options, you've got our projected population. My concern, and I'll just be blunt, is that these numbers are estimates, obviously. And I'm just concerned that, does this go far enough, is the question I'm asking out loud. Are we going to be back here in 6 years, 8 years, looking at these wards again? I'm just wondering if you can comment on that.
I will let Josh speak to the numbers and the nature of where they come from. But as I suggested in my opening remarks, this is a process that has not happened in this municipality in nearly 25 years. And that, I think, is on a broad level. I don't live here, but I would see that as unacceptable. To simply put it together and let it stay where it is for that long. You don't do that with any other part of your governance structure. You didn't buy a fire truck in 1999 and leave it untouched for 25 years, or whatever, snowplow, whatever it is. You come back and review it from time to time. And in your case, it may be driven by population growth, the concentration, the amount, the distribution over time, that would basically say, we're out of sync again. We now need to do this another time. But let me ask Josh to speak to the numbers themselves.
Yeah, so the numbers we have here, we usually span out 3 election periods. In this case, Listowel, as we all, or North Perth, as we all know, is kind of running out of land, especially in the Listowel area. So Our projections, what we provided here, are estimates on where we know growth is going to happen, noting that there is population estimates that we might hit 25,000 people by 2036 there. That's not factored into this. What we're factoring is where we know growth is happening, with the idea of that Listowel is going to expand. So that's why we see I'll say the box around the Listowel area now, trying to capture most of that growth. Although we don't know where it's going to happen with an expansion, if that does happen to the settlement areas, we have an idea that it's happening in Listowel. So we've tried to capture that, but the planning landscape is a bit of a changing landscape right now. So as those changes come up and are approved and implemented, we may need to relook at this in 5-10 years, depending on how all that develops. But as Bob said, we're taking a look from 20 years to now, noting that there is needing a change, and this one is a suitable change for a number of years. And I'll let you guys, I'd say, determine on what's long enough. And as we roll through, those may need to change again, most likely before the next 20 years, but it could be sooner than later as well.
Thank you.
If I may, Councillor, just add another point here. The issue of that last principle about clear boundary lines or whatever, it's one of the reasons why the first option, the first preliminary option, was modified in these to create that, if you will, that square look on the north side of Listowel, which doesn't correspond to the settlement areas, because I would bet that probably 90% of the community doesn't know where that line is. They can find that other one. So we adjusted to make it clearer and again, to anticipate especially that southwest side where the growth is going to happen. So again, that's where that other principle gets factored into what you've got in front of you. I will say, not as an encouragement, well, it's sort of an encouragement. Some municipalities where we've gone through this exercise have added to a bylaw related to these changes a commitment to review the boundaries after maybe every 2 elections. It just becomes policy, or it's a standard practice that you go back and do this. The province doesn't ask you to do that, but some municipalities have chosen to build that in to their governance structure, that they do review it on a regular basis. So again, that's not a plug for contracts later on, but it's just a reminder that this is a gap that you are in a position to address. Again, with the kind of growth that's happening, to be ready for it and not to let things get out of hand. I'm talking too much, sorry.
Councillor Norton, then Councillor Rothwell.
Yeah, thanks for your report. Deputy Mayor. I'll just be blunt. Like, we're not KW. We have a lot of rural issues, like as we've seen like tonight. I'm not overly thrilled with losing 2 rural voices. Just a lot of the things that we deal with is a lot of drains, a lot of issues. Do you think rural North Perth will lose a big chunk of their voice if we move to a system like this?
No, I don't. Frankly, I don't. The distribution that we are proposing here is based on the distribution of population in your community now. It is not changing that. The old towns, the original municipalities may disappear, but we believe that in this context, the rural community has a voice that can't be ignored. Yes, it's not a majority because it isn't a majority. And so we try to build lines around that concept to preserve them. And again, there are some comments that have come up from time to time. Well, why couldn't, and I may not get it exactly right, but the idea that, well, every ward should have maybe a bit of Listowel and a bit of rural. And our view, and again, we talk about that in the report, that would essentially mean the rural area has no voice because it's outnumbered in every ward. This at least provides 2 and perhaps 3 wards that are going to be rural, no question. The Atwood area growing might change that a bit, and that might be why you might come back and look at it later. But this basically says there are 3 wards that are rural. And that is in some ways even slightly overrepresenting on a strict numeric basis the number of rural residents in North Perth.
supplement?
Again, that's our perception. Sure, you have a different one, and would like to not see these lines used. That's your prerogative, certainly.
No, go ahead. Yeah, it's worth the discussion. I'm also curious if we're going by population, has the Eat and Grow Village development been taken into consideration? I mean, we're probably talking a fair number of residents that would be moving to that section.
If it was in the development application process, then yes. I don't know off by hand which ones were included, but if it is in the application process, then we have accounted for it.
Would you have any idea, CAO Snell, or? What number?
13B. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure. Certainly in the work that Watsons have done through the county official plan, that development was contemplated. So I'd have to double check that for sure. But because there is a development process started, but I don't know how far along it was. But we can check on that.
And that was the Eden development?
Yeah, it's just on Highway 23, just between Listowel and Palmerston.
Okay, we can have a look too as well.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Rothwell?
Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor, and thanks very much for your presentation. First off, your presentation, can we get a copy of that, and then will it be posted up on our website?
Yes.
Just for the public as well. I think it's important. So two other points. The first one, just on slide number 2, I think, and in the report, I think it's just slightly confusion here, but there's 3 points. So, but here, on the second bullet point, that both the deputy mayor and county councillor are to be elected at large. In my view, I think mayor should also be included in there because it is already. And we're saying up to a 10-member council. So I think the math equals, and we specifically say mayor in the last line. So maybe it's a statement of the obvious, but I think it's important that mayor be added to deputy mayor and county councillor, just for clarification.
Yeah, and again, that's a bit of our taking for granted. Every mayor has to be elected at large. You can't do anything about that. So yeah, it's not listed there as because that was really to confirm that those 2 offices would be filled that way. So again, it's a bit too concise to capture that. This was, again, that's partly a sustaining arrangement, partly a change. So yeah, I'll have Josh change the text on that and send it over.
Just a suggestion. The last point I just want to make is that clearly in our last election, any election that we've had, but whenever we're at our boundaries here between Alma and Listowel or Wallace and Listowel, there is confusion within the electorate in terms of what ward they're actually in. And I think certainly going to having 7 wards will add to that. And that's no reason not to do it. It just means that clearly the municipality is going to have to do an incredible job of public education so that people actually know what ward they're in so they know where to vote. And I think that's the critical issue for everyone. I mean, frankly, my understanding is that we had some people that were just downright upset because they felt that they should be voting in the Listowel ward and they were in the Alma ward. So they had to vote in the Alma ward. But nevertheless, they are the people that chose to go out and vote. And when you look at our percentages at some 27%, hallelujah, they came out and voted. And they have the right to be upset if they didn't know exactly where they were. But public education, in my view, is going to have to be a principle that we go at hard and often. To the benefit of our community. But I believe in representation by population, so I'm certainly in favor of this. I know what some of our councillors are saying in terms of perhaps less voices directly around the table from those wards that we currently have. But with the full knowledge, what you've said is that you don't actually have to live and you don't now, live in the ward that you're actually running in should give some options that are available. It could go both ways, right? An urban person could run in a ward.
Of course, yes.
And likewise.
I would agree with you, Councillor Rothwell. One of the reasons we wanted to get this done is to give the time for the community to learn about those things. And that may go over to the budget process to build on an education campaign well ahead of the election so that people do understand, what the changes are and what the direct impact on it. I mean, I'm certainly in agreement. This is a fundamental change. This is a very big change for North Perth, but it's not before time, as in my personal view. I'm going to throw my other line in here, Josh. When I finished that report that we gave to you in July, if you go to the last line, it says perhaps it's time for a tune-up. Began to think later, actually what we're really talking about is a trade-in. You're going to rebuild this around a new set of arrangements, and that's going to take time to get used to around the table and around the community. But as I said, and I'm maybe being a bit too outspoken here, it's not before time.
Thank you. Councillor Andreessen.
Thank you, through you, Deputy Mayor Kelm. I'm a little disappointed that I'm hearing from different community members who I would say are generally engaged about how they don't know what's going on with the whole ward changes. I know that I have witnessed communication from our municipality to be quite good. I have seen the options in the newspaper. I have heard the options on the ranch. I have seen the options on our website, and I attended public meetings myself. And yet I'm hearing from our community that they don't know what's going on. So I'm not sure how to fix that. I don't have any answers, but I would like to, somehow see what else could be done to perhaps inform the community more about what, these options are about and what we're considering. And even, Watson and Associates indicated that the feedback opportunities weren't as high as what they'd like to see. So those are my comments about just some concerns about what else can be done to, reach out to the community, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andreessen. Anyone else? Councillor Norton?
Thanks. This past I think it was Saturday, I had the privilege of attending the Remembrance Day ceremony in Minto. And I was just talking to some of the members there about their county representative. So right now theirs is also elected at large, I imagine, or I know. From their experiences, they weren't overly thrilled with that system because they feel that a lot of the members of the public first go towards the mayor, the deputy mayor, and kind of the county councillors just kind of, or gets a free ride, I guess. I don't know. Sorry, Matt, if that. But so they were looking at doing away with that, and then now we're starting to say like, maybe we should do it. It kind of seems backwards to me, but I don't know. I'm willing to hear what you have to say.
Well, if I may then, Deputy Mayor, again, we went through some of this in phase one. Yes, you could switch back. Your deputy mayor was originally elected by council for one election, and then it was turned into an at-large position. And we did not hear or see any sense that there was an appetite to give that job back to a ward councillor, to have someone do both jobs. Conversely, it was a case of saying, well, if you're electing two of them at large, why not the third one? They play the same role. That was part of our thinking about that, and why we felt for North Perth that made sense. With a council of 10, which is pretty large for a largely rural municipality, it made sense to make that adjustment. Again, that's what that second bullet is about, to say, let's take that county councillor role out of a ward basis and make it a councillor at large, so that the three people at county are all elected across the whole municipality. But you're right, that's not always the way it's done. There are many municipalities that have switched back and forth. We provided advice to some who took the deputy mayor position and integrated it back into a ward system, and others who've gone the other direction. So it's a matter of what's best for North Perth at this point in your relationship with the county and the role that you're expected to play. So, Minto is working with Minto. And that's the best I can say is they decided that was the direction they would go.
Can I have one little supplementary?
One
It'll be
more.
quick, I swear. So right now, we're underrepresented at our county. So let's say a miracle happens and they say North Perth should have another voice.
Yep.
How about would we go from there?
Again, it's up to you. If you want to start doing a trade-in and rebuild the whole system, fine. I suppose if you got a fourth seat, it'd be just as easy to add another at-large. But that's, I know it's tough to campaign for some on that basis, but it really, again, would be a matter of let's go back and look at how well the proposed 7 wards have balanced out. Maybe there's a sense that you could go down to 6. I don't know. Again, it's too soon to say that as an outcome, but again, that's part of revisiting your governance structure, which unfortunately under the Municipal Act, you don't have to do that unless you're forced to. And something like that I think would be widely valued. At least I hear that around this table. Be valued to have that extra seat. How you want to fill that, again, you've got options that are there without having to change anything that might be come out of this review, or to be completely creative in some other way.
I believe C.O. Snell wants to weigh in, and then we'll have one final comment from Councillor Andreessen.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to make a clarification too. In Wellington County's case, the elected at-large councillor doesn't serve on the lower tier councils, which will be different than what our situation is. It's the mayors in Wellington County plus county councillor elected, sometimes across municipalities. So I think the Mapleton Minto share representative elected at large. So it's a little different system. I agree with Bob. There's no perfect situation, but there are differences all across the province.
Perfect, thank you. One last comment, Leanne?
Sure, thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor Kellum. I think from my perspective around having the electorate, the constituents decide on a county councillor, it gives the opportunity for those who are interested in running to actually tell their story, to actually share what their interests are, what their perceived ideas are for the work. Whereas the way we're running it right now, there's no opportunity for that. It's just kind of putting names forward, and there's no ability to state, why those people are wanting to pursue those positions. And the vote isn't really based on any information, it's just based on names. So my preference would be to have that type of vote being done by our constituents who could be informed by the candidates about why they want to do that type of work. So just my thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor Andreessen. Anything to wrap up?
Thank you. No, just have to work out a date to hold this,
Perfect.
if that's what you decide to do here in that motion. Yeah. And now we'll come back. I hope we don't need to prepare anything more. I think we've got more than enough to do that. So we'll just come in and be ready to participate in a discussion with residents and with council.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation, fellows. Okay, so in front of me I have a resolution, one that reads that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receives the report entitled 2023 Council Composition and Ward Boundary Review, Municipality of North Perth. Final report prepared by Watson and Associates, Economists Limited, for information. Moved by Councillor Johnson, second by Councillor Richardson. And that is carried. The final resolution that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth defers a decision on the council composition and ward boundary Municipality of North Perth final report until a special council meeting at a later date is determined. Moved by Councillor Anstead, second by Councillor Duncan. And that is carried. Council, would you wait like a 5-minute comfort break, or do you want to keep rolling on? Comfort break? Yes? Okay, let's resume back here at 9:11. Okay, what's the new fella's name? Hey, what's the finance guy's name? Ashton? Ashton. Now, what was the other thing I was going to do? So he'll be coming on the appointment of treasurer, right? Now, what are we going to do with... Okay. Oh, we haven't did that yet. We can do the council meeting schedule, right? What are we doing here, Matt, with this? Oh, you both, yeah. I'd like both your input. Oh, it's 12. This one here. This is the one for Cleveland, right? Are we making any?
Do the first and second reading, right?
We should need him anyway right now. Okay, council, moving on. Item 9.2.2 invites council to approve the 2024 council meeting schedule. I'll invite Sarah Carter, our clerk, to address this item.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Kellum, through you to members of council. Before you tonight is the proposed 2024 council meeting schedule. This schedule was prepared in accordance with the recent adopted procedure bylaw, which, as you will remember, recommended moving to 2 regular council meetings per month instead of 3. So in accordance with that bylaw, we've prepared the schedule. Meetings fall on the first and third Monday of the month, and when necessary have been adjusted.
Thank you. Council, any comments or questions for Clerk Carter? Seeing none, I do have a resolution that reads as follows. That the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approves the 2024 council meeting schedule included as an attachment to the 2024 council meeting schedule report dated November 20th, 2023. Moved by Councillor Nordham, second by Councillor Richardson. That motion is carried. We have a meeting schedule for next year, including reductions stemming from a recently approved procedural bylaw aimed at limiting ourselves to 2 regular meetings per month. We turn now to item 9.3, reports from our Environmental Services Department. Item 9.3.1 invites council to authorize the mayor and clerk to promulgate an agreement for the source water protection Part 4 enforcement transfer. I'll invite Mark Hackett, of our Manager of Environmental Service, to address him. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Kellum and Council. Since 2014, we've had an agreement with a source protection plan Part 4 enforcement transfer agreement with the Sabo Bayfield Conservation Authority, and they delegate risk management official and risk management inspector services for all of those municipalities that you see listed there. The agreement includes such things as database management, annual reporting, site inspection, and the development and provision of educational materials across the municipality. ABCA also develops and updates risk management plans for properties within the wellhead protection areas that may have significant drinking water threats within them. So the current agreement expires on December 31st of this year. They're looking for another 3-year agreement that would take us to December 31st of 2026. Schedule A that was included at the end of the agreement, or Appendix A, shows that for North Perth for the 3-year period, it would be a cost of $21,839.77. Happy to say that that's actually down from $30,569. It mainly has to do with fewer risk management plans to develop. That usually takes a fair bit of their time. And all of these are expenses that have always been included in the annual water budget. I could take any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Blazik?
Thank you, through you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Mark, for your report. I'm just curious, is there a reason that they want a 3-year renewal instead of a 4-year? And the only reason I'm asking is because, 2026 is an election year, and when that new council comes in, sometimes this information is really overwhelming, and you're having to make a decision on stuff that, our source water is super, super important, and we're personally liable for a lot of that information and providing that water. And so I'm just wondering if we could do a 4-year so that new council isn't inundated with information right after an election and having to make a choice right after an election when, there's a lot of information to not really know what you're doing with quite yet.
In response, I would say in the future, I could definitely recommend that to them. I know that a number of these other municipalities have already passed this agreement, so I don't think we'd be able to do it this time, but it does actually makes a lot of sense to actually do it on a 4-year term. So I will definitely recommend that for the next agreement.
Thank you. Any other questions for First Carlins? Seals now.
Just in response to Councillor Blazek's question too, this is one of the things actually we were looking at maybe delegating to staff in the meantime too. This is a pretty routine agreement now. This is, I think, the third or fourth time we've signed it. So as we proceed, this might be something that that gets delegated to staff, especially if it just keeps going with one of the local conservation authorities.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, Council, do you have a resolution that reads as follows? The Council of the Municipality of North Perth authorizes the Mayor and the Clerk to sign the Source Protection Plan Part 4 Enforcement Transfer Agreement. Moved by Councillor Rothwell, second by Councillor Anstett. And that is carried. Thank you. In item 9.3.2, staff returns to Council with a report requesting during a recent capital or project budget meeting intended to reveal cost comparisons between electric vehicles and internal combustion engine vehicles. A few hybrid type vehicles have been thrown in for our information. We are seeing a new staff recommendation which alters the earlier recommendations to Council. Our Manager of Environmental Services, Mr. Hackett, is here to present us with the report.
Thank you again. I'd say the first thing that I found when I was doing this report, when I was doing some research, is that there's an absolute massive amount of information out there on the internet on this topic. For every article that I found that was pro-EV purchasing, there was the opposite as well. So because there was so much information there, I tried really to keep the comparison simple by getting most of my information from Natural Resources Canada, the website, and it also had this handy fuel consumption ratings tool that I used to develop some of this report. So the first part of the report, there's a chart on the front page of the report. It's intended just to sort of outline the various types of vehicles that we're looking at. So we have the battery electric vehicle, which runs on battery power only. We have a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, which runs on gas and electric. We have the hybrid electric vehicle, which runs on gas and electric that charges while driving. And then we have gas-powered vehicles, which are our internal combustion engines. So in this report, I've outlined a number of items that I think we need to consider when we look at these things. So starting off with legislative considerations. So the federal government has mandated that 20% of new car sales be electric zero-emission vehicles, or ZEVs, by 2026, and that 60% of new vehicles by 2030, and also that 35% of medium and heavy-duty vehicles, excuse me, be zero-emission vehicles by 2030 as well. Another consideration to look at is the environmental considerations. So I included a chart, or it's the life cycle emissions of electric versus combustion engines, and it's just sort of to illustrate the emissions that we see from each of the types of vehicles. So looking at the top line, there's the manufacturing of batteries and vehicles, and that's the production emissions. So it compares battery electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles, and internal engines. And that's the part up in the blue, and there's a purple there for the battery. So these are tons of carbon dioxide equivalent that are produced. The second part is the fuel and electricity production, tailpipe emissions and maintenance, and that's more of the user phase emissions. And finally, there's the end of life or post-consumer emissions, and they're actually emissions credits that are associated with recycling of vehicles. So if you look at the very bottom of the chart there, what that is a total of each of those columns for each of the vehicles. So if we look at a battery electric vehicle, it would, over its life cycle, would have 39 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. A hybrid electric vehicle would have 47, and an internal combustion engine would produce 55 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. And that's mainly because of the tailpipe emissions. When you compare it to electric vehicle, you can see that there are zero. And moving on, There's also financial considerations to take into consideration here. Typically, electric vehicles are more expensive to purchase than a gas-powered vehicle, but they tend to have lower fuel costs and lower maintenance costs. And there are currently some federal rebates of up to $5,000 for electric vehicles and $2,500 for plug-in hybrids. So I used that fuel consumptions rating tool to do a chart that I've also attached. There's a multitude of vehicles, pretty well every vehicle you can possibly find was in this. So I tried to pick a few that I thought were most applicable to this situation. So working from the left-hand side over is the type of vehicle. So the first three there are Ford F-150 pickup trucks. They're either gas, hybrid, or EV. And then the third column is the annual fuel cost based on about 20,000 kilometers per year. That leads us to then a 7-year fuel cost for those different vehicles. And then I have the purchase price. And this one, what I tried to do with this was find vehicles online with a price that was related to them. That being said, when it goes through a tendering process, we could do better than what some of these vehicles are priced. But I just wanted to kind of try to compare apples to apples of what I could find online. So then if you move across and look at the 7-year fuel savings, and we come up to the purchase price less the fuel. So basically what that is taking that purchase price and the fuel savings and to come out to a time period where it might pay off. So we're looking at a 7-year time period here. You're basically on the pickup trucks, they're evening out at about 7 years. We're slightly ahead at $325. Again, that's depends on the price of gas, the price of hydro. There's a lot of variables here, but just for comparison purposes. The most important part of this, I think, is the final column, which is the carbon dioxide emissions in grams per kilometer. You can see that the gas vehicle has 284, while the electric vehicle has 0. So then what I tried to do was look at what else could we purchase instead? And so we don't always have to purchase pickup trucks because we don't always have the need for pickup trucks in every situation. So I looked at a couple of other ones that were seen to be more available, like the Honda CR-V all-wheel drive, and I compared a gas and a hybrid, and also the Kia Sportage all-wheel drive, where I was able to compare a gas, hybrid, and the plug-in hybrids. Again, for the Hondas, they basically are close after 7 years. The Sportage is, there was some savings there over a longer period of time. And then what I did was take at the bottom, the last 3 rows there are kind of comparing. If we were to compare the gas vehicle that we typically purchase for pickup trucks, and look at that cost compared to what it would be if we purchased a Honda CR-V or a Sportage all-wheel drive. When you look over on the right, or the second last column there's some significant savings there, and that's mainly because the purchase price is quite a bit cheaper for the all-wheel drive vehicles, the SUVs, and also the fuel savings there. So that was just sort of trying to illustrate what potential savings there could be, and also that the need isn't always to have a pickup truck, because a lot of times when we're driving around, especially in the Environmental Services Department, we're stopping at 6 or 7 different wells, we're stopping at pump stations, and they're kind of in and out of vehicles all the time, and they're not carrying a lot of things, it's one person driving around. So that was a suggestion there. Another consideration is the availability and the procurement consideration. So currently the supply of electric vehicles is not very good. We have wait times from 6 months to 18 months and even longer, and that's pretty typical now. So when we attempted to procure a hybrid electric vehicle earlier this year, the request for proposal actually received no bids. And potential bidders were hesitant to commit to being able to supply a vehicle that both met the specs of what the tender was and also commit to a price that might be a year and a half down the road when they don't really know what that price is going to be. A couple things I also wanted to add on this point is that the 2023 to 2026 strategic priorities of focus for 2024, which were noted in the Environmental Services Department 2024 business plan,
stated that North Perth is trying to be a leader in mitigating and adapting to the challenges of climate change. And additionally, with the previously mentioned federal mandates that are seen to be knocking on our door regarding zero emission vehicles, I think it's important for us to find a way that we can procure these in the future, to procure electric vehicles in the future. I have discussed it with our procurement officer, and we're looking at preparing a report that we could bring back to council with what are different methods that we could actually move to that, because being able to purchase, when you need a vehicle next year, we need it next year, not a year and a half from now. So maybe to look further out would be the answer, and then come up with a way to be able to procure something like that. And if the need is there, and if the desire is there to go to a greener type of vehicle, then that's what we would go ahead and do at that point. And finally, I had some discussions with Chief Pape about this. The 2024 capital budget currently includes the purchase of 2 pickup trucks for the building department, and also the electric vehicle, as I mentioned, for the environmental services department. And there is a need for timely replacement of those vehicles. And to lessen the financial effect, to avoid the procurement issues being faced with ordering an electric vehicle, it's proposed to remove the electric vehicle for this year and the 2 pickup trucks from the capital budget with council approval, and proceed to procure 3 hybrid all-wheel drive SUVs, which are more readily available. We've actually found some that would be available locally. Additionally, it's proposed to remove the proposed SUV replacement of the hybrid Mitsubishi, and it would be retained for operational purposes. So overall, we would be looking at the capital budget being amended to reduce the capital budget by about $145,000. So I'd be happy to try to take any questions from these.
Thank you, Mark. Council, first comments or questions? Councilor Rothwell.
Thank you, and through you there, Deputy Mayor Kelly. Just wondering, I think it would be interesting, don't expect really a response, but the life cycle of EVs and the actual inordinate costs of battery replacement after 7-8 years, is the actual trade-in value of the vehicle worth anything? Because if that comes to the effect as compared to a gas vehicle, at least it has a higher trade-in. Not necessarily saying that's the way to go, but it's also a mitigating factor that might skew the costing savings over the whole cost of ownership. Thanks.
I'll take it. 13B. I'll take an opportunity to answer this question. So the first thing is we usually keep our vehicles so long, whether they be internal combustion engines or otherwise, until they almost have no trade-in value, because they get cascaded down our operational fleet, and even used on such sites as the landfill. So we've actually had very little trade-in value. We've actually got most of our value from selling our vehicles as done gov deals, but they still go for very low value because they're usually high kilometers and significantly over 10 to 15 years old, often closer to 15. Secondly, we've only had the experience of having the Mitsubishi. I believe it was purchased in 2015. It's now 8 years old. We've had very little problems with that vehicle for that time period. We still plan on keeping it in operation. So a little too early to tell. And certainly our experiences, we have never really been a high trader in of high value vehicles. Usually, for a couple of reasons, usually have high mileage, lots of wear, sometimes some scars from doing the type of operational work we do. So that's been our experience.
Yep, that's good.
Councilor Rothwell.
Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Mark, for your reports. Just last Wednesday, I attended Municipal Day, and our own CAO, Chris Snell, was talking about our carbon footprint initiative, as well as City of Stratford talked about their initiatives, and Huron County was there, among others. But anyways, specifically vehicle fleet were talked about for municipalities, and I appreciate the work and effort that you've done here to sort of shed some light on this. And I believe it's the right move to make, and I'm certainly speaking in favor of your recommendation here, that we need to show the leadership that we're part of in terms of the carbon footprint initiative. I think your report helps underscore that, and I appreciate your time and effort to do that. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Councillor Rothwell. Anyone else? Seeing none, Council, we do have a resolution in front of me that reads as follows. That the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receives the vehicle cost comparison report dated November 20th, 2023 as information. And further that, the Council of the Municipality of North Perth directs staff to amend the 2024 capital budget to reflect the proposed vehicle purchases for the Building Department and the Environmental Services Department. Moved by Councillor Rothwell, second by Councillor Andreessen. And that motion is carried. A revised purchasing plan will be enabled for these 3 vehicles targeted for purchase by Operations and Environmental Services. Thanks again, Mark. Okay, we're now at item 10 on our agenda. For item 10, councillors, are there any reports you would like to ask of staff or committees? Councillor Andreessen?
Yes, thank you through you, Deputy Mayor Kellum. I'm just wondering if staff could prepare some information regarding doing an update on a bylaw that would pertain to council ceremonies for people in our community who have been exceptional contributors to our community. I know our current bylaw, our current policy is really reflective more on sports championships. And I'm wondering if it would be worthy of doing a review of that and bringing back a report on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andreessen. I believe you'll make that motion.
Yeah, please. Thanks.
And seconded by Councillor Blazik. You can wordsmith that for us? Okay, thanks. Please add Councillor Richardson. And that is carried. Thank you. For item 11, we have no... hello, Councillor Rothwell. Thank you. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Just further regarding reports, I'm not sure. Well, actually, I'll just come out and say it. So I did have a conversation with our planner here regarding the recommendations that this council would make to county council regarding the related official plan amendments for the Cleveland application. We dealt with the zoning bylaw tonight. Traditionally, my understanding is that we've had a report through to this council that made a recommendation through to council, county council on the official plan amendment, which I believe the public meeting is the first week in December. And I'm just wondering if, in discussion with staff, if we would be able to receive a report so this council could give direct recommendation on the OPA.
Okay. I take it you'll make that motion? Or what is...
Perhaps if I may just defer to staff, if they could provide comments. I think the question is whether we have time or not to do that. My understanding is it's the first Thursday in December. I just don't know if we have time to get a report before then or not. But that's the standard procedure that we have, as opposed to the public meeting being held at the county and then deferred till get a report or a recommendation from this council. Thank you.
CO Snell? Oh, I guess you're speaking with me right now.
thank you. I'm just conferring with Planner Garland, but I think we would be able to bring it back on the 4th and have it to County Council for the 7th. So we can I think we can arrange that.
Perfect, thanks.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you very much. That's a standard. I just want to make sure that it's something that's, I don't want additional work. It's just a matter that I think is important that this council have an opportunity to give its recommendation through to council, county council on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Through to the clerk, do I require a motion for that or just direction? Direction is okay? All right.
Yeah, I move that we request county planning staff provide a report through to county council regarding the Cleveland official plan amendment application 219, I think it is, for recommendation to county council.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please note that Councillor Johnson's going to have to declare pecuniary interest on this. So we have a motion on the floor, moved by Councillor Rothwell. Do I have a seconder? Moved by Councillor Andreessen. And that is carried. Please ask Councillor Johnson to come back in.
Are you doing bylaws next, though? I might request another report.
You're going to get your exercise.
Get your exercise tonight, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Norden.
Since we're in the requesting mood, I think it might be wise for us to look at our no winter maintenance roads. I know some houses have been taken down, some have been added, so it might be wise for Public Works to look at if we should add no winter maintenance roads or subtract no winter maintenance roads. I'm not sure the last time those have been looked at, but roads have changed, houses have changed, and equipment's changed. So I think it might just be wise. No rush on that report, but it might be wise to look at it. Thanks.
CEOs now.
So certainly they're reviewed on every time a building permit's issued or for either a farm building or a new house on a no maintenance road. But certainly it's something we can take a look at. I suspect it was maybe addressed to the master transportation plan, but I could check with Public Works.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any other? Seeing none. For item 11, excuse me, we have received no items of correspondence beyond that has already been shared for council's disposition. So we'll move on to bylaws. Please note again that Councillor Johnson has declared pecuniary interest on this. So at this point, we turn to consideration of bylaws that have been recommended to us for action. Tonight, we have for consideration a total of 2 bylaws. The enabling resolution outlines their number and purpose. Before I read the resolution for the passing of these bylaws, does any councillor wish to extract one or more of them for fulsome consideration? Councillor Rothwell?
Item 12.1, the 145-2023 bylaw, please.
Okay. Go ahead.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. The reason why I was concerned about this is that we heard from the applicant's agent regarding concern for the parking provisions that were included in the bylaw, and we didn't have any discussion as to whether or not we wanted to leave them in or take them out. So that's the reason why I was concerned about the resolution on the bylaws. So I'm just not sure. I know first and second reading gives us a third chance to go at it, but without awareness that there's the concern or acknowledgement of the concern that the applicant expressed or agent expressed, I thought I would express that concern now.
Okay. So if we do vote on the 2 bylaws, like you said, we still have the third option to go at it. Is that not enough before it comes to?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, I'm satisfied with that. I just want to make sure that council's aware that, yes, we did hear the issue and that the provisions then can be revised on that third reading. And then further to the comments that I made in terms of specific clarity in terms of the permitted use, to make sure that for the applicant's perspective is that they're not that they have assurance that they can do exactly what it is that they're proposing to do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sure that will be dealt with in depth at County Council as well. Okay?
I'll be satisfied. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, we do have a resolution that reads as follows, that bylaw number 145-2023 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 6-ZB-1999 is amended to be read a first and second time and be provisionally adopted. And that bylaw number 140-2023 being a bylaw to appoint a treasurer is hereby passed. Moved by Councillor Richardson, second by Councillor Nordham. So we're only going to vote on the first one for now? I see. Right. Okay. And that is carried. Please invite Councillor Johnson back in. We're now at item 13 on our agenda. Is item 13.1, Council will now consider a resolution submitted as a notice of motion by Councillor Alan Rothwell at the November 13th, 2023 meeting of Council. The clerk was given written advice about this matter and suggests that, in fact, to accord with our procedure bylaw, we should split the motion in two parts. The first part being the reconsideration. A reconsideration requires a recorded vote of council. It is not debatable and requires 2/3 a majority for it to be passed. Let us address then the reconsider resolution at this hour. Resolution reads that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth reconsider resolution number 525.11.23 school bus stop arm cameras from the November 6, 23 council meeting based on the information presented by John Chapman and Ryan Chapman at the November 13th, 2023 council meeting. That is moved by Councillor Rothwell and second by Councillor Johnson. And that is carried. Thank you. Now we turn to the matter of a further and different action being considered. Namely, what was the second part of the Councillor Rothwell's resolution from last meeting. It does not have the range of constraints of a motion for reconsideration and may be considered in the usual fashion. Let's go to the text of that and see how Council will proceed with this resolution. Let North Perth Council support a pilot project in North Perth by the local school bus operations to install school bus stop arm cameras, provided that the local OPP support the pilot project, and that, if approved, North Perth staff notify the County of Perth Provincial Offensive Office and the Community Safety and Wellbeing Committee of the school bus stop arm camera pilot project. I'm the mover for that one. Again, moved by Councillor Rothwell, second by Councillor Andreessen.
Will there be room for discussion and debate and council?
I can allow for that, yes. Go ahead, Councillor Blazek.
the Chapman family and Nuri Coach Lines. I just thought maybe we should set the parameters or expectations that we have about this school bus stop arm camera program or pilot that we want to run. According to Mr. Chapman, there are 37 buses within North Perth in some capacity. So just wondering, are we wanting our pilot program to put school stop arm cameras on 37 buses, or are we wanting to direct staff and the community safety and well-being committee on a specific number, 10, for example, high-risk buses as determined by staff and by the bus lines? And I just thought we should be clear about our expectations.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rothwell?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Blazek. My understanding in discussions with Chapman's, and certainly in their presentation, I believe the number was 7 buses that they mentioned specifically. Frankly, personally, I don't believe that council has to mandate what those numbers were, and as well, my recollection and discussions further with John Chapman specifically was that he hopes that it would be both Nuri coach lines as well as Elliott bus lines, and specifically on in terms of the higher risk areas that he's determined would be Perth Line 86 and Highway 23 or Road 164 in particular, as well as others. It's not my intention in terms of the resolution to guide or direct specifically which routes or buses that they would be operated on. My understanding is that at the cost per bus is that was a cost which was given some $3,300, I believe, per bus, and that council could at some point, I believe, I was not here last Wednesday, but based on budget chair Anstedt's, I believe that we were going to discuss at upcoming meeting, I think on the 29th, in terms of any monetary contribution which this council would make towards the bus companies for that. So that's my understanding, but I certainly understand Councillor Blazek's point of view, but my personal expectation is that we would not expect any more than what the bus operators were prepared to do in terms of a pilot project to move this matter forward.
Thank you. You okay with that? Okay, thank you. See no other comments? Moving on, do any councillors wish to leave to give notice of motion this evening? Oh, yes? I thought we did not. Thank you.
We're that close to voting.
And that is carried. Now, does any councillor wish to give notice of motion this evening? Seeing none, we're now at item 14. For item 14, are there any announcements that would be the benefit to our community or that reflect well North Perth at this time? Those connected remotely may request an opportunity to speak through the text chat window, while those in the chamber may raise their hands to be placed on the speakers list. Anyone in the YouTube? Teos now?
I'd just like to quickly, and I know council passed the bylaw tonight, but I'd just like to quickly introduce Ashton Romney, who's our new officially appointed treasurer for the municipality and manager of finance. Today it's his first day. I know many of council got to meet him tonight, but just wanted to introduce him to the public and welcome aboard to North Perth. But we're looking forward to his contributions.
Thank you for, go ahead. Thank you for catching that. And yes, welcome. It was very busy at the beginning of the meeting for me. I didn't get to say much to you, but I will stop by your office and have a candid conversation in the very near future. But again, welcome to North Perth. We all look forward to working with you. Councillor Anstead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Collins. Yes, welcome. Our new treasurer, and just in that theme, council will know we have a special council meeting on November 29th to deal with some additional budget items. So the treasurer and I will be having some discussions before that point, I'm sure, as well. So thank you.
You may get a few things going your way, being as he's new. Anyway, Councillor Johnson.
Just a 4-H announcement again at the recent TD Classic, which is the largest dairy 4-H show in the world. Perth County sent 9 representatives, of which 3 were from North Perth, and 2 North Perth 4-H members received top 5s. Jordan Hawthorne from Bothmer Farms out on the other side of Listville was 5th in senior showmanship, and Seth Johnston, Alan's nephew, was 5th place calf from all of Canada, and then he followed it up with at the National Holstein Show with a 2nd place 4-H calf in the National Holstein Show. And Perth County, out of 47 provinces and counties, placed 2nd in exhibit out of them all. So they were very well representative, and North Perth was very well represented amongst the youngsters. So.
Thank you for sharing that with us, and please pass on. Any other announcements? I'm seeing none. Item 15, we have no matters for consideration in a closed session tonight. So we have no matters to report out. We'll now move on to the confirmatory bylaw. Please note again, Councillor Johnson has declared pecuniary interest. Council was mandated Good Practice Acts near the end of its meeting agenda to confirm all of its actions and business of this meeting through what are called the confirmatory bylaw. For item 17.1, I have the draft for the confirmatory bylaw number 146-2023 that reads as follows. That bylaw, bylaw number 146-2023, being a bylaw to confirm generally previous actions of the Council of the Municipality North Perth, is hereby passed. Moved by Councillor Blazek, second by Councillor Enstedt. And that is carried. Please invite Councillor Johnson back in. Councillors, we have completed deliberation and taken action on the business that has come before us tonight. It is thus appropriate for us to consider adjournment. I have a motion to that effect that reads as follows. That the council meeting adjourns at 9:54 p.m. to meet again for general council business on Monday, December 4th, 2023 at 7 p.m. Moved by Councillor Johnson, second by Councillor Norton. December already. Yes, it's gone quick. And that is carried. Our next regular council meeting is Monday, December 4th, 2023. Until that time, this council is adjourned. And my pen just ran out. Oh no, there it is.